you want to gain range of motion without pain. This is something that often gets overlooked. A lot of people, when they stretch, the whole no pain, no gain, that annoys the hell out of me, and a lot of people still adhere to this advice. But if you are really in a lot of pain, what's going to happen is you're going to tense up, you're going to hold your breath, and that is going to cause a lot of restrictions in your movement. So hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today I've got another book review for you guys, and today I'm going to be reviewing the book Stretch to Win by Ann and Chris Frederick of the Stretch to Win Institute, and they also happen to create the Fascial Stretch Therapy Program, which I'm going to be reviewing for you guys next week, so be on the lookout for that. In terms of myself, I've been coaching for 18 years, and in my 18 years as a coach, this is easily one of the best 18 books that I have read in that time. And in terms of who could benefit from purchasing this book, if you are somebody who's looking to improve your flexibility, agility, balance, speed, strength, power, I would highly encourage you to buy these books. And in terms of who won't benefit from it, if you are somebody who absolutely hates stretching and you have zero interest in stretching, then I wouldn't recommend that you get this. But we're going to get into the pros and cons but first, real quick, like the video and comment down in the comment section, as it would really help me out and help it with the algorithm. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the content. And now we're going to get into the pros. Right in front of me, I have two versions. The blue cover is the original, and the black cover, this is the second edition. And there are a little bit of differences between the two, a lot of similarities, but there are a few differences, and we're going to get into them. Personally, I would encourage that you pick up both if you are interested in stretching, because the new book has a lot of new information that wasn't in the old book, and then the original, a lot of information was omitted from the second book that I really did like. So I would encourage you to pick up both, as they would both be wise investments. In terms of the similarities, both of the books, they're going to get into the anatomy and physiology of fascia, and they're both going to have the same 10 principles behind stretching and fascia. With regard to the 10 principles for optimal stretching, the verbiage might be a little bit different, but the principles are identical. Principle number one, you want to make sure that you sync your breathing with the movement. A lot of times people are going to hold their breath when they stretch because they tend to overstretch, or they are just going to kind of breathe all over the place. But when you are stretching, you want to make sure that your breath is synced up with the movement if you want to get optimal results. Second principle is you want to make sure that you are in tune with your nervous system. With regard to this principle right over here, what happens is a lot of people, again, going back to the point of pain, if you are very stressed out, or if you are performing stretching before an event versus after an event, all of these different factors are going to dictate how exactly you're going to stretch. So for example, with sports, if you are training a professional athlete and you are going to stretch them before an event, you wouldn't want to stretch them the same way after an event. After an event, or if you're doing it before bed, generally the movements are going to be a lot slower because you want to try and get their body to ramp down and calm down a little bit after the excitement from the game. Whereas if you were stretching them before a game, you don't want their nervous system tuned like that. You want to ramp them up. You want to get them excited. You want to get them pumped for the game. So the movements, they're going to be a lot faster. Principle number three, you want to follow a normal anatomical order, a logical anatomical order. And with regard to this, typically, the way it's going to work is you want to stretch the deep layers first, and then you want to get into the superficial layers afterwards to get the most effective stretch. And you also want to go proximal to distal. So you would work the muscles that are closer to the core first before moving on to the extremity. Principle number four is you want to gain range of motion without pain. This is something that often gets overlooked. A lot of people, when they stretch, the whole no pain, no gain, that annoys the hell out of me, and a lot of people still adhere to this advice. But if you are really in a lot of pain, what's going to happen is you're going to tense up, you're going to hold your breath, and that is going to cause a lot of restrictions in your movement. So if you are able to increase your range of motion, it's going to be a lot more effective if you are pain-free, because if you're pain-free, you can relax and get deeper into the stretch. Principle number five is you want to stretch the fascia, not just the muscle. With regard to stretching, a lot of people, they're going to just do very basic stretches, and when they think of stretching, they think of stretching just individual muscles. So if you want to stretch your legs, some people, they'll just grab their ankle, bring it toward their butt to stretch their quads, but fascia is all interconnected. Let's take a look, for example, at our posture. A lot of people, they're going to have overpronated feet, valgus ankles, valgus knees, anteverted femurs, excessive anteversion of the pelvis. They are going to have hyperlordosis in the lumbar spine, hyperkyphosis in the thoracic spine, forward head posture. So all of the fascia throughout that entire chain is all interconnected. So let's say you have pain somewhere in your lower back. Well, if you have an anteverted pelvis and hyperlordosis in the lumbar spine, what's going to happen is the fascia in the lumbar spine, the thoracolumbar fascia, fascia is going to be restricted. And because it's restricted, a lot of people are going to think, oh, if I just stretch the lumbar spine, my problems are going to go away. However, all of those areas that I just mentioned are connected. So the reason you have low back pain, it could be because you have an overpronated foot, or it could be because you have forward head carriage. So if you just address the lumbar spine without taking a look at the surrounding musculature, then you're not going to get the deepest stretch possible. Then principle number 6 is you want to use multiple planes of motion. A lot of people, when they stretch just in the sagittal plane, and they don't incorporate other types of either ranges of motion or different degrees. Let's say you're stretching the pec. There's going to be very different results if you stretch the pec just horizontally, as opposed to if you change the inclination. So if you go up a little bit or down a little bit, you're going to change the fibers. Generally, what happens is, depending on how exactly you position the arm, that's going to dictate which fibers are going to be under more tension. So if you are stretching the pec horizontally, you're going to target mostly the horizontal fibers. As you start to go more upward, what's going to happen is you're putting the more inferior fibers under tension, so you're going to start to stretch more the inferior fibers. If you start to go more inferiorly with the arm, you're going to stretch more the superior fibers. So depending on the angle of inclination, and also depending on the level of medial or lateral rotation of the shoulder, that's going to dictate what gets the most attention. Because if you rotate your arm more medially, the more superior fibers are going to be under tension. If you end up stretching your pec and you go into more external rotation, now the more inferior fibers are going to be under tension. So you want to play around with different ranges of motion. Principle number 7 is you want to target the entire joint. The difference between book 1 and 2 is just the verbiage. In book 1, it's called target entire joint. In book number 2, the new one, it's called expand the joint. And the way that it works is you don't want to just stretch the pec like that, because at the end of the day, you don't want to just stretch the muscle. You want to target the joint capsule as well. We have the joint capsule, and then the joint capsule, the ligament is going to attach the ligament to the bone, and then from the bone, the tendon is going to insert into the muscle belly, and then the muscle belly is going to insert into the tendon, which is going to attach back into the bone. So if you want to get the greatest results in terms of achieving more range of motion, you don't want to just stretch the individual muscle. You want to target the entire joint capsule and all of the surrounding structures in the joint capsule. Then principle number 8, you want to use traction. This is another thing that kind of goes in with the whole joint capsule issue, but if you have a joint that is really restricted, let's say it's coapted, so it's stuck in, what happens is when you are stretching a muscle, you're trying to lengthen it. So it makes sense that if you want to lengthen a muscle, what you would do is traction it first and then stretch it to get the greatest range of motion. Then principle number 9 is you want to facilitate the body's reflexes. This is another one where it's just a difference of verbiage. In the original, it's called you want to facilitate body reflexes. In the updated version, it is you want to use resistance. But basically what you are doing with this one right over here is you are incorporating PNF, or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitated stretching. And one of the techniques is crack stretching. And with regard to crack, it is contract, relax, agonist, contract. By contracting the muscle and then relaxing, you're able to get deeper into the stretch. And this is something that Robert McGee goes into in one of his books. If you haven't picked up the book Facilitated Stretching, it's all about PNF stretching, and I'm probably going to be reviewing this book as well, so be out on the lookout for that one soon, possibly. And finally, the 10th principle, this one right over here, is you want to adjust the stretching according to the person's goals. Depending on what exactly they're doing, you want to make sure that the intensity of the stretch, the duration of the stretch, and the frequency of the stretch is individualized to each different patient or client. You don't want to stretch everybody exactly the same. With regard to intensity, if you have somebody with a very, very low pain sensitivity, the amount of stretch that you could put them through is not going to be as much as somebody who has a very, very high amount of pain tolerance, or somebody who is very, very hypermobile. So for somebody with a low pain tolerance that is also very, very restricted, you're not going to stretch them as deep as somebody who has a very high pain tolerance and somebody who is very hypermobile. Then, with regard to the actual duration of the stretch, because we're syncing up the breathing with the movement, if you have somebody who is able to relax a lot more and they're able to breathe a lot slower, you're going to stretch them according to their breath. So you're going to stretch that person a lot slower than somebody who tends to breathe really, really fast, because either they're really, really nervous or very, very anxious. And then with regard to the frequency, you want to see how much improvements can you get in range of motion. Let's say you take somebody through 3 passes of a stretch, and that's all of the benefit that you're going to get. You're not really going to be able to see anything more after that. Then 3 passes is all you need to do. But if you're able to take somebody through 7, 8, 9 passes and you continue to see results and increases in range of motion, you're going to want to do more and more ranges of motion. You're going to want to do more passes through that particular stretch. So those are the things that are basically the same between the 2 books. Now we're going to get into the things that are a little bit different. The first thing we're going to get into is the personal flexibility assessment. It is in both books, but it's a little bit different between the first two. And for those of you who are interested, I actually did a movement assessment a few years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago. If you want to check that out, it's right up over here. Go ahead and check that out. But with regard to the differences, in the original book, the actual assessment process, the self-assessment, it is 7 steps, technically 8 if you include the customized stretching program, but the actual steps itself, it's 7. And then in the new version, it's 5 steps. The differences is, in the original book, step 1, you take your personal history. Step 2, you want to go ahead and you want to describe the symptoms that you are experiencing. Step number 3, you do your postural evaluation. Once that's done, step 4, you go through your sport-specific movements. Step number 5, you go through the active range of movement assessment. Then step number 6, you figure out if you see any type of trigger points. And then step number 7, you end up reviewing the results. And then this isn't step number 8, but technically it would be step number 8 because step number 8, you customize your stretching program. With regard to the new version, it's only 5 steps, and there is no specific chapter on customizing the stretching program. It is included in the personal flexibility assessment section. So in the new book, the 5 steps, step number 1, you want to test your worst functional movement pattern. After you've done that, the second step is you want to identify the problem. Step number 3, what you would know is you would want to note the mobility sequence where you had the most restriction. Then step number 4 is where you create your personal flexibility program. And step number 5, you would retest the functional movement to see if there have been any type of improvements, and then repeat the whole process until everything is tip-top. Then we're going to get into some other stuff with regard to books number 1 and 2. In the original book, they go through the core 4 on the floor sequence. It is a very, very great thing for the lower body if you're looking to improve lower body range of motion. And I actually did a video about 3 or 4 years ago on the core 4 on the floor. You can check out this video right up over here, or you can check out the original video, which is on the Stretch to Win YouTube channel. But in it, what it does is there are 4 different movements for the lower body. You are going to be going through the glutes, the iliopsoas, the quadratus lumborum, and the lats. With regard to the new version right over here, they have done the Great 8. The Great 8, it includes the core 4 for the lower body, and then you have the core 4 for the upper body. The core 4 for the upper body, it is going to include the pec minor, the rotator cuff, the levator scapulae, and it is going to include stretches for the rhomboid. So overall, with those 8 stretches, what you are doing is you are going to be targeting the back power net, the deep front net, the lateral net, the arm net, the deep back arm net, and the deep power net. Now, with regard to the Grade 8, the Grade 8 technically is in the original copy. However, it doesn't take you through the whole sequence, and it's not called the Grade 8. It just includes them in the actual stretches. But overall, in the new version, it goes through the entire sequencing for the Grade 8 program. Then, with regard to the actual other types of stretches in here, in the original book, there are going to be some very basic stretches that are a little bit more local, and then there are some more advanced stretches that are going to be more global. Whereas in the new book right over here, all of the stretches, they're going to be a little bit more advanced and a little bit more global, so they do leave out some of the more basic and more local stretches, and I personally do enjoy some of those basic and local stretches, so I would recommend getting the original just for that as well. And with regard to the difference in the sport-specific section, once we get to the sport-specific stretches, what happens is in the original, there is this chart, and the chart, it's going to get into dominant movement patterns for different sports. The stretches themselves between the 2 books are basically the same, but that chart that comes in the original, it is not in the new version. It was omitted, and I really, really love that chart. I wish they would have included it in the new version, so for that reason, I would definitely pick up both copies, but overall, it's absolutely terrific. And then when we get into the actual assisted PNS stretching portion of the book, this is where if you are somebody who is either a manual therapist, personal trainer, strength coach, there's going to be a lot of great assisted PNF stretching programs in here. And for those of you interested in learning more about assisted PNF stretching, I actually have a whole playlist right up over here, and it includes a lot of assisted PNF stretches, and it is all of the information learned from Dr. Robert McAtee in his book Facilitated Stretching. So if you are interested in learning about facilitated stretching, I definitely check out that playlist. But overall, in the original book over here, there is going to be some table stretches that you're going to perform. There is going to be some floor stretches. There are going to be some seated stretches for the upper body. And then in the new version right over here, there is a table routine and there is a floor routine. The chair routine has been omitted from in the new book, so I would recommend it just for that. That's the main difference between those 2 sections in that particular book. But overall, I highly encourage you to pick up these books if you are interested in stretching, if you're a personal trainer, if you're a strength coach, if you're a manual therapist, if you are a yoga practitioner, anything like that. I would highly encourage you to pick up these books. And then I would also recommend, if you are interested in taking the fascial stretch therapy course, which I'm going to be reviewing for you guys next week at 2 o'clock p.m. So be out on the lookout for that next Thursday at 2 o'clock p.m. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask your questions down in the comment section so I can help you guys out. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to keep making these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the new videos. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again tomorrow.